We'll be starting in about 1 minute. Alors, bienvenue. On commence dans environ 1 minute. Good afternoon. So I'm Sergeant Amy Gagnon, and I will be the moderator for this media availability this afternoon. We'll be providing an update on the ongoing Gibford Drive homicide and shooting investigation. Alors bonjour, je suis la sergente Amy Gagnon. Je serai votre modératrice pour cette disponibilité aux médias. Nous allons faire le point en lien avec l'enquête qui est toujours en cours sur l'homicide et la fusillade de Gibford Drive. Alors, nos participants cet après-midi sont le chef du service de police d'Ottawa, Eric Stubbs, la chef adjointe, Trish Ferguson, et le surintendant, Jamie Dunlop. And our speakers this afternoon will be our Chief of Police, Eric Stubbs, Deputy Chief Trish Ferguson, and Superintendent Jamie Dunlop. So just for your awareness, we are broadcasting this live on our YouTube channel. Alors, pour votre information, nous retransmettons cet événement en direct sur notre chaîne YouTube. So Chief Stubbs will say a few words, Deputy Trish Ferguson will say a few words, and then we'll have a question period. And any questions in relation to the investigation that we have Superintendent Jamie Dunlop that will be able to answer them, okay? So we'll get underway with our Chief of Police, Eric Stubbs, make some opening comments.
Thank you, Amy. Good afternoon, thank you for coming today. On Saturday night, we experienced a terrible act of violence that left 2 people dead and 6 injured. The shooting has shaken our city, our communities, and those that live in nearby neighborhoods. The impact of the shootings on the families and friends at the wedding is tragic and far-reaching. What should have been a happy occasion has changed lives forever. I want to express my condolences to the victims' families and all those that were traumatized last Saturday night. To the residents of Ottawa, you live in a very safe city. However, recent increases in shootings, and in particular, this event, causes many to wonder if, in fact, you are safe. It is why we are holding this availability, to let the public know that we are working extremely hard with our full homicide team, bolstered by additional investigators, to ensure that we are able to bring those responsible for these crimes to court. And as you'll hear later, we are asking the public, along with those that were at the wedding, to help us advance this investigation. It's very complex and very difficult investigation. We need to hear from you. I will ask Deputy Chief Trish Ferguson to provide an update on our investigation. Trish.
Thank you, Chief, and good afternoon, everyone. On Saturday night, there were two weddings occurring at the Infinity Convention Centre on Gibford Drive in Ottawa. Both weddings were well attended. At 10:21 p.m., our 911 centre began receiving multiple calls reporting shots being fired and people being injured. Officers were immediately dispatched, with the first officer arriving on the scene at 10:24 p.m. This was a chaotic scene, with multiple people injured and many attempting to flee the area. Officers and emergency responders flooded the scene, attending to victims and searching for the person or persons responsible for the shooting. It was soon determined that the shooter had fled the area. In the aftermath, 8 people were found with varying degrees of injuries from non-life-threatening to critical. Despite emergency responders' life-saving measures, 26-year-old Saeed Mohammed Ali and 29-year-old Abdi Shakur Abdi Dahir were later pronounced deceased. Of the 6 injured people, 1 remains in hospital while the others have been released. Saeed Mohammed Ali arrived in Canada 4 short months ago to establish a new life here. Abdi Shakur Abdi Dahir had begun a career as an engineer. Both men were from the Toronto area, and their lives were cut short, leaving behind friends and families to grieve and look for answers. Our homicide unit has been in constant contact with their families since. Detectives are working around the clock, along with members from multiple units like our Guns and Gangs unit and our Forensic Identification section. This integrated team of investigators is looking at all angles and evidence. I can share with you at this point, our investigation has determined that this was in fact a targeted attack. It was focused on individuals believed to be attending one of the weddings. We do not, however, believe that any of the victims of this brazen and careless attack were the intended targets. Further, there is no evidence to suggest that this was a hate-motivated crime. Our investigation has revealed that approximately 50 rounds were fired into the crowd on Saturday night. It is clear that this could have been a much more deadly attack. Our investigators are collecting and reviewing video in the area and following up on leads, including connecting with the Toronto Police Service. We continue to ask anyone who was in the area at the time of the event to contact us with anything that you may have seen that seemed out of the ordinary. You may have dash, doorbell, or home security footage capturing something like a speeding car that may have seemed insignificant at the time. There are also a number of restaurants, patios, and other businesses in the area that may have captured something on video, and we would ask that those are reviewed and shared with police. In fact, we know that many people who were present are not coming forward or have more information than they initially shared with police. We understand there may be a hesitancy to come forward with information, but we're imploring people to consider the victims, their families, and the community at large who's been affected by this horrific attack. The information you have may help solve this cowardly attack. I want to remind the public that our ability to solve this crime depends on people with information coming forward to help bring context to the evidence that we've already collected. And I want to thank the media for being here and keep ensuring that this tragedy stays in the public eye. I also want to reassure you that we are committed to bringing those responsible to justice. In order to do that, support and cooperation from the community is vital. Thank you. I now have some comments in French. Alors, samedi soir dernier, notre collectivité a vécu un terrible acte de violence qui fit 2 morts et 6 blessés. Les fusillades ont ébranlé notre ville, nos communautés et ceux qui habitent dans les quartiers voisins. Les répercussions de ces fusillades sur les familles et amis présents au mariage sont tragiques et profondes. 2 jeunes vies furent perdues lors de ce qui aurait dû être heureux événement et plusieurs autres furent changés à jamais. Cette violence est inacceptable et nous tenons ce point de presser pour partager tout ce que nous pouvons avec la population et continuer à appeler les gens pour nous aider à faire la lumière sur cette affaire. Je tiens à exprimer mes condoléances aux familles de victimes et affirmer la collectivité que nous prenons toutes mesures possibles pour élucider ce crime. Cette violence est alarmante et nous mettons tout en œuvre pour en retrouver les responsables. Alors, pour ma part, samedi soir dernier, 2 mariages avaient lieu au centre de congrès Infinity, promenade Gibford. Il y avait beaucoup de monde aux deux mariages. Vers 22h21, notre centre 911 se mit à recevoir de nombreux appels faisant état de coups de feu et de personnes blessées. Les agents furent immédiatement dépêchés sur les lieux et le premier agent arrivant sur place à 22h24. Le chaos y régnait, avec plusieurs blessés et une foule de gens s'affairant à s'enfuir du secteur. Les policiers et autres intervenants d'urgence déferlaient sur les lieux à la recherche des auteurs de la fusillade et de leurs victimes. Il fut bientôt déterminé que le tireur s'était enfui les lieux. 8 personnes blessées furent trouvées, certaines blessures ne mettant pas en vie péril, autres critiques. Malgré l'intervention des intervenants d'urgence, les décédés de Saïd Mohamed Ali, âgé de 26 ans, et Abdi Shakur Abdi Dahir, âgé de 29 ans, furent constatés par la suite. Parmi les 6 blessés, un d'entre eux repose toujours à l'hôpital, tandis que les autres ont reçu leur congé. Il n'y a que 4 mois, Saïd Mohamed Ali était arrivé au Canada pour s'établir et y faire sa vie. Abdi Shakur Abdi Dahir avait débuté une carrière d'ingénieur. Notre unité des homicides est demeurée en communication constante avec leur famille et travaillé jour et nuit, épaulée par plusieurs autres unités, notamment celle des armes à feu et bandes de rue et de la criminalistique. Nous disposons d'une importante équipe d'enquêteurs qui examinent tous les éléments de cette preuve et les indices sur tous les angles. À l'heure actuelle, notre enquête nous a permis d'établir qu'il s'agissait d'une attaque ciblée. Celle-ci visait les personnes qui assistaient vraisemblablement à l'un des mariages. Rien n'indique qu'il s'agirait d'un crime motivé par la haine. Nous ne croyons pas que les victimes de cette attaque effrontée et imprudente comptaient parmi les victimes visées. Notre enquête a établi près d'une 50aine de balles furent tirées à la foule. Il est clair que ces événements auraient pu être encore plus mortels. Nos enquêteurs recueillent et examinent des séquences vidéo capturées dans les environs et suivent les pistes, notamment en liaison avec le service de police de Toronto. Nous continuons à demander à quiconque se trouvait dans les environs lors de ces événements de nous faire part de tout ce qu'il aurait aperçu inhabituel. Vous pourriez avoir des données de caméras témoins, de caméras de sonnette ou de vidéosurveillance montrant quelque chose, par exemple une voiture roulant à toute allure, qui peut alors avoir semblé sans importance. Il y a aussi plusieurs restaurants, terrasses et autres entreprises dans les parages qui pourraient avoir capturé quelque chose sur la vidéo. Nous comprenons l'hésitation à se manifester avec l'information, mais nous prions les gens de songer aux victimes, à leurs familles et à l'incidence de ces horribles actes sur la collectivité et de nous faire part de renseignements qui pourraient empêcher d'autres tragiques pertes. Nous savons bien que les gens qui étaient présents ne se manifestent pas ou en savent plus long qu'ils n'étaient disposés à l'avouer. Pour que nous soyons en mesure d'élucider ce crime, il faudrait que ces gens qui sont au courant nous aident à placer de leur contexte des éléments de preuve que nous recueillons. Je remercie aux gens de la média d'être ici aujourd'hui et de veiller à cette tragédie demeure dans l'esprit du public. Je tiens à vous assurer que nous sommes là pour vous et nous sommes là résolus à traduire en justice. Nous allons travailler assidûment à trouver des réponses et à tenir responsables à leur acte les auteurs de cette tragédie. Pour ce faire, le soutien de la collaboration de la collectivité sont essentiels. Merci.
So we're now going to move to a question period. Alors, on va passer à la période de questions. So one at a time, please say your name and which media outlet you're with, and you'll be able to ask one question and a follow-up. Alors, veuillez nommer votre nom et qui vous représentez. Vous pourrez poser une question puis une question de suivi. Okay? Alors, on commence. Go for it.
Jeremy from CPD Ottawa. I guess my first question, are you able to clarify whether, so 8 people were injured, 2 were killed, So out of the 6 that were injured, are you able to confirm whether those 6 people were injured by gunfire specifically?
Yes, of all of our victims, all of them were wounded in various degrees from gunfire. Thankfully, the other 6, 5 have been released. I'm not clear if the 6th is still in hospital, but was in stable and condition and recovering from their wounds.
Given that, and the fact we heard today 50 shots were fired into a crowd.
Yes.
Has part of the investigation so far, or has it been considered at all, that this could be considered a mass shooting?
We believe, again, it was targeted. Now, obviously, numbers, when someone's so brazen to decide they're going to show up at a wedding or another area, and we've seen this before in Ottawa, and fire into an urban environment where people are gathered and not have care for where those bullets are going, then you're going to have, unfortunately, more people hit. A mass shooting from the perspective of what a definition may be, where people might think where a person intended to hit all those targets, I don't believe we have any evidence that would suggest that.
Hi, Liam Fox of the Canadian Press.
Yes.
Do police know what weapon was used in the attack?
We're collecting a great deal of evidence in order to protect the integrity of the investigation. At this time, however, we're not going to release that information.
Okay. And police said, actually, are you treating this as a gang-related attack? Have you identified it as that yet?
Well, we're most certainly considering it as, until you find out the motives, identify all people involved, again, for integrity investigation, but without question, we believe these are people who are involved, if you will, in the criminal elements within our society. Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Oui, pour une question en français.
Oui, question en français.
Est-ce que, selon vous, les gens qui possèdent de l'information qui ne sont pas venus vous voir pour la donner au complet, est-ce que c'est parce que les familles qui sont impliquées dans le mariage sont connues des milieux policiers pour être impliquées soit dans des gangs de rue ou le crime organisé?
C'est difficile de dire. Je ne sais pas exactement la raison pour l'hésitance de venir nous parler, mais c'est un fait qu'on attend, on a de la difficulté à parler avec certains mondes qui ont été au mariage.
Est-ce que vous vous attendez peut-être à une contre-attaque ou une réplique après cette première attaque?
C'est très difficile de dire. Non, ce n'est pas quelque chose qu'on en vise maintenant, mais oui.
Oui, aussi.
Allô, Charles-Antoine Gagnon avec le poids. Est-ce que si les 8 personnes, 6 blessés, 2 décès, n'étaient pas ciblés, avez-vous été en mesure ou êtes-vous en mesure de peut-être savoir qui était ciblé?
Ça fait partie de l'enquête et puis c'est quelque chose que nos enquêteurs sont en train de trouver avec leur recherche et puis leur entrevue avec le monde. Alors, c'est quelque chose qu'on attend à savoir dans les journées qui suivent.
Il y a les 2 victimes décédées sont de Toronto. Jusqu'à combien votre enquête vous amène à Toronto?
On a parlé avec la police, le service de police de Toronto, et puis, si nécessaire, nos enquêteurs vont voyager à Toronto si ça trouve être nécessaire. Ça répond à votre question? OK.
Matthew from CBC. If you could just provide maybe a little bit more information on the victims. Obviously, we know the 2 men who died are from Toronto, but in terms of the other victims, and also it being a wedding,
Yes.
have a whole range of ages, family members.
Yeah,
and so on.
no. So to be clear, there were two events going on in the Infinity, 2 weddings, 2 different weddings. One wedding was well underway within the confines, I believe, of the center. The other one was going through its process with many people still milling about. And like any wedding that you may attend, right, you're going to have families, you're going to have kids, people coming from out of town. We know of people from Toronto. We have 2 individuals that were from Ohio. As well, that came from far away, as anybody's wedding would be. Family and friends come from long and far, and they were there to celebrate and be part of this, the festivities for these families. So it is quite tragic when someone decides to choose that location to carry out these type of crimes.
I just want to be totally clear.
Sure.
Are you describing the wedding guest list in general, or specifically the victims when you're saying there were people from Ohio?
Oh, sorry, there's wedding guests, sure, but certainly some of our victims were also from Toronto and from Ohio. The ones from Ohio have been released from hospital. But yes, but like I said, we have, when you have a wedding, people come from far around. I'm sure they came from many other locations as well. And the important part here is that what we're trying to get through is we've collected a lot of evidence. We have a lot of investigators that are out there today and will continue because we do have leads to follow. What you'll never replace in criminal investigations is the eyewitnesses and witnesses coming forward. They help to take the evidence that we collect and connect the dots. They help us to tell the story, and we really are here to appeal for people that we know have more information, and they may be hesitant for many reasons, to step forward and give us a call and let us help them through that.
And kind of picking up on a question that my colleague asked, in terms of the nature of the targeting, or knowing who a possible intended or not intended target was, what can you share about that?
To protect the integrity of the investigation at this time, and I know that can be frustrating sometimes for reporters, but it's really early on. So that's information that we're not going to be releasing at this time.
Are the 8 victims from the same wedding, or are there some from the other wedding?
No, I believe they were all attending that one same wedding.
Could we just get a bit of, I guess, to follow up my colleague's question here in English?
Sure.
I believe she asked about the hesitancy for some of the people you believe to be victims
Yeah.
to come forward, to these witnesses to come forward.
Sure.
Is it believed that any of them were involved in gang activity as well, or do you have any indication?
No, it's a great question, and here's hopefully a good answer. People are struggling today in a lot of our crimes to come forward. There's a hesitancy, and I think there's multiple factors for individuals. Sometimes it's that fear, obviously, to be getting involved. What does that mean for me or my family if something was to happen? And again, those are the individuals I think we can help through that. In other cases, I think our society has gotten used to modern police techniques. The police will take care of it, right? That's your job. And I think they sit back and wait, saying, well, somebody else might have saw what I saw, and I'm sure somebody else called, or something of that nature, right? And we're really saying, listen, if you have any information, I believe the deputy mentioned, down the road, a hunt club or elsewhere, there's patios. I believe it was a nice summer evening. People sitting out may have saw something that they just have disregarded. Often those are the little pieces that help us take when we have other pieces of evidence. It helps us then to put it together and we follow further. So we really those are reasons why sometimes people don't come forward, and we really would like them to consider stepping up and giving us a call.
Oui, vous avez 5 ans pour Radio-Canada en français. J'aurais aimé vous entendre en fait sur la question que mon collègue vous a posée sur les gens qui étaient présents au mariage. Souvent, il y a des familles aussi qui sont là avec de jeunes enfants. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous en dire plus sur le genre de personnes qui étaient présentes, mais aussi les autres personnes qui ont été victimes de cette fusillade-là?
Nous sommes au courant qu'il y avait des familles. Il y avait plusieurs membres d'une famille qui étaient là. En tant que les âges, on n'est pas dans la capacité de dire exactement s'il y avait des petits-enfants. Et puis la deuxième partie de votre question, pardon?
En fait, pour ce qui est des victimes, les personnes qui ont été atteintes par balle.
Oui, alors c'est tous des adultes. Je n'ai pas les âges. Do we have the ages of the victims?
29 and 24.
No, the other ones who were...
Oh,
Well,
I don't have them
je pense
handy.
pas qu'on a les âges tout de suite de ceux qui ont été blessés.
C'était pas des gens uniquement qui venaient d'Ottawa.
Non, c'était un petit peu... on connaît qu'il y avait 2 qui viennent des États-Unis, spécifiquement de Ohio, et puis les autres sont de la région d'Ottawa. Non.
Vous avez aussi mentionné que les 2 personnes qui ont perdu la vie, en tout cas pour le moment, ne semblaient pas être les personnes qui avaient été visées par la fusillade. Vous n'avez pas non plus de suspect, que vous avez quand même des indices, une voiture qui a été observée sur place, vous faites appel à la population, mais quand même, ça fait quelques jours.
Oui, et puis il y avait beaucoup d'informations que nos enquêteurs sont en train de faire. Il y a des entrevues avec des personnes qui étaient là, il y avait avec du monde qui était aux alentours, le monde qui travaillait au centre. Alors tout ça, c'est encore tôt pour... on organise tout ce qu'on a, mais en tant que vidéo ou des indices sur le suspect, on n'a rien donné aujourd'hui.
Journalist Ottawa Citizen. Can you tell us a little bit more about these 50 rounds? Where in relation to the building did they go off, and have you recovered all of the bullets?
We did a very in-depth forensic audit and search, obviously. We believe we found all of them. I don't want to be too specific, again, because what we want when we're asking for witnesses is to make sure that the information they're providing to us is their information and not because they hear me talking too much about the event, so I apologize for that. But it's safe to say they were in various locations throughout that whole area.
Is there anything about the firearm itself? I know you
Yeah.
can't say what it is. That would
I don't mind, I think I can say pretty clearly they're handguns, and we have been talking quite a bit in our communities and in our country about handguns and where they're coming from. And I would have no doubt to find out that these handguns are illegal handguns being smuggled across the border or brought in from other means.
Does the individual have multiple handguns?
Again, we're still doing that investigation, but again, the handguns we're finding in our shootings and throughout Ottawa, Toronto, doesn't matter, they're coming back illegal.
Okay, but there's no
Yeah.
indication that there were multiple weapons at the scene?
Not at this time in terms of what, again, to take the investigation, I don't want to say one way or the other.
Oui, puis j'aurais une question. Si vous pouvez répéter un petit peu là, ce qui a été mentionné par rapport aux armes là, qui étaient présentes lors de l'événement. Puis j'aimerais savoir aussi, est-ce que les 50 tirs ont été tirés par la même personne ou on parle d'un échange de tirs?
Ça, on n'est pas capable de dire maintenant pour l'intégrité de l'enquête. En tant que le calibre aussi, c'est quelque chose qu'on ne veut pas dévoiler à ce point-ci. Et puis, en tant que les armes, nous sachons qu'il y a une grosse théorie que les armes viennent des États-Unis ou ne sont pas venues au Canada ou ne sont pas achetées.
50 fusillades en 2023, en date du 5 septembre, 60 l'année dernière pour toute l'année. Je crois que de mémoire, c'était 48 pour la même date par rapport à l'année dernière. Donc on voit très clairement que ça progresse, voire ça reste en tout cas comme l'année dernière, ça ne s'améliore pas. Peut-être plus sur un plan politique, est-ce que vous allez avoir des soutiens? Est-ce que vous demandez...
Notre groupe, notre unité de armes à feu et puis des gangs de rue. Et puis c'est eux autres qui travaillent sur ce point-là. On a toujours une demande pour plus de ressources pour mettre sur ce point. Et puis c'est quelque chose que je sais que la communauté est alarmée à cause des nombres. Et nous autres aussi, comme le service de police, on a les mêmes inquiétudes.
Et donc, une question juste complémentaire. Est-ce que ça veut dire qu'il ne faudrait pas aussi améliorer peut-être juste les liens avec les communautés? Donc, ça veut dire aussi avoir plus de moyens de ressources humaines, on s'entend là, mais plutôt que d'arriver et d'être toujours à constater la situation, de peut-être anticiper et d'être vraiment, parler peut-être plus avec les communautés, avoir des agents qui seront plus présents pour peut-être avoir plus de facilité à avoir ensuite la communication?
Absolument. Je pense que tu as répondu à ta question même. C'est quelque chose que nous sachons que...
This year?
Yeah, I said just that, how this year and that, do we need more funding? What are we doing on a political level?
Right.
Just so that they get the
Well,
English.
certainly, in terms of more funding, more resources for the Ottawa Police Service, we have been very vocal. I've been very vocal in regards to the need to invest in policing. We're hearing from our community that they want to see us more in the community, and we have seen an uptick in our calls for service for a number of our key crime indicators. And I do see, since I've been here in the last 9 or 10 months, a number of our units that are strained. So we want to make sure that we stabilize the service, so they're able to do a lot of proactive work, and that includes our guns and gangs, our homicide, our frontline resources as well too. And we're, as we presented at the police board 10 days ago or so, we have a hiring plan for 3 years that is fairly aggressive, but certainly it aims to stabilize the service.
Sarah from City News. Are you still working with Toronto area investigation units on this case? And what have you gathered from those forces, if you have?
Go ahead.
Sure. Out the Toronto, mentioned earlier, we had some of our victims, of course, were from Toronto. Toronto, and as well as identifying initially early on in the investigation, identifying a lot of the individuals who were there. I said that people come from far and wide, and Toronto Police assisted with that. Without question, wherever this investigation takes us, be it with the Toronto Police, the OPP, you know, I can go on, Montreal, Surintendent, Quebec, we have a great relationship with all our policing partners, and we will most certainly tap into every single one of them to solve this crime.
The next question, follow-up?
Yeah, you can do a follow-up, it's your first one.
Have you spoken with the bride and groom, and how are they doing?
Yeah, no, look, this was a very tragic event, which is going to have an impact on a lot of people. And we were respecting the the emotions and everything that'll come from that. And in time as well, we're hoping to have more dialogue with everybody involved in the bride and groom and the families. But as you can well imagine, a very tragic time.
So I'm going to go with Matthew. Go with Jeremy. I was going to call you Colton, that's bad. Jeremy and Joanne, okay? So do those three, and then we're done. So go ahead, Matthew.
First is just to make absolutely clear, all of the victims were not the intended targets as far as you know at this stage in the investigation.
From our investigation to this point, we do not believe any of the victims were any of the intended targets, so they would be bystanders at the wedding.
And, sorry.
Yeah.
When people first hear that the deceased victims were from Toronto, and sometimes people in Ottawa might then think, oh, this is a Toronto problem that somehow spilled into Ottawa.
You're right.
Given, what can you say about whether this is a made in Ottawa, what happened here was a made in Ottawa situation, or it reflects something else going on?
Yeah, no, as you probably note, a good way to answer this is that we have a lot of combined units across the province, right? We have a provincial weapons enforcement. We have a guns and gangs now that's province-wide because our criminals now don't respect jurisdiction, right? They don't stay in Toronto, they don't stay in Ottawa, they don't stay in Montreal. So the investigation right now, it would be a mistake to think this is a Toronto problem, for sure, to answer that question directly. There's no evidence to suggest that this was because they're from Toronto, there's people from Toronto, because like I mentioned, they were not the intended targets. So our investigation will take all that in. So Ottawa has this, unfortunately, our own problem when it comes to illegal handguns and in terms of shootings, gangs, people involved and willing to conduct these acts to forward their criminality, if you will. So I think it's important to keep focused on the fact that this is a problem that happened in Ottawa, and as we investigate, we'll take that wherever we have to go.
Jeremy?
Again, just a brief clarification, and make sure I heard this correctly earlier. I believe it was said this was one shooter, and it was 50 shots that were fired.
We found 50 casings. We don't, again, for the integrity of the investigation, we certainly have, this is why, we want witnesses, and I want to hopefully really stay focused on this press conference, and what we're hoping is to really reach out to those individuals involved, because we have conflicting evidence, conflicting accounts, and that's the type of thing we want to settle, and I don't want to, give you a definitive answer, because that's part of what this is all about.
Joanne?
The police have a specific definition of gang-related, which may differ from the public's definition or understanding. What is the police definition, and by that definition, could this be or is this gang-related?
Yeah, and I think we've certainly been talking about this from the Guns and Gangs unit. Ottawa is a very unique city when it comes to gangs, from the perspective of over time our gangs have devolved, if you will, into being more cooperative with each other. It's not as a defined gang of A against B or things of that nature. They're much more cooperative in nature. So from that perspective, when I say street or criminality, those are the individuals that are all the type of crimes that you're referring to when you think about what a gang is. So I do believe we are the gunplay on the streets, all that type of stuff. Those are the individuals we're talking about. So I'm not avoiding the gangs, but we don't have the same defined gangs here in Ottawa as we see elsewhere. But it's most definitely a street level, if you will, crime, I think, that's been perpetrated here. Okay.
So, thank you very much for your participation. Merci de votre présence. Ça termine notre disponibilité médiatique, and that ends our media availability for today. Thank you.